The stories that touch your life with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters. This is 2020. Tonight, a revelation that shocked a nation. The Catholic Church and a cold-hearted plan. Babies, thousands of them, taken from their mother's arms, shipped across the sea for adoption in America.
It was bad enough I felt in being adopted, but to be sent so far away, I felt it was worse.
They were young mothers, unwed, judged, at the mercy of the church.
The minute they went in, they were treated like criminals.
A misguided plan then, haunting church officials today.
How can you judge the 1940s with insights of the 1990s?
Then, the saga continues. Heartbroken mothers now daring to come forward. Can they ever find their lost children?
I love him as I loved him the day I said goodbye to him.
And a daughter from America discovers the secrets of her birth.
You met her?
Would her first mother welcome her home? Tom Jarrell with a 2020 classic. The story of a very different time, a powerful church, desperate young women, and a heartless act in the name of God. The Lost Children of Ireland. And
we begin with a discovery that shocked a nation and exposed a heartless plan involving one of the most powerful organizations in the world, the Catholic Church. It's the story of young women who broke the rules of their church and society and paid a cruel price. Ireland is just waking up to this hidden episode in its past. And tonight, for the first time, Americans will hear the part they played in this drama.
For decades, the story went untold, a secret kept by women made to feel ashamed of their past. They were unwed mothers, judged and ostracized, forced to turn to the Catholic Church for help. What happened to them as a result may now seem beyond comprehension. But as Tom Jarrell discovered in Ireland, it was the only choice for women born in a different time, in a distant place.
It was a dark chapter in the history of a beautiful nation. Ireland. Now hidden facts have emerged to reveal shameful deeds of honorable men, a merciful church showing no mercy, the displacement of a generation of children through the intimidation of their mothers, helpless women who had their babies stripped from them and shipped to the United States, never to be seen again.
I was very frightened of having to give my baby up because I had bonded with that baby and I was very close to him.
This is from here I lost him for all those years. Years that we should have had together, had the system and had everything been different.
And he was going to be sent to America. And I felt it was bad enough I felt in being adopted, but to be sent so far away, I felt it was worse.
The social stigma was enormous. Pregnant, unwed women, up until the 1970s, were scorned by Irish society. The Catholic Church branded them as sinners. Their own families deserted them, and so to be single and pregnant for most, there was only one option. They were forced to hide the pregnancy, slip into one of the many church-supported mother-baby homes, and give up their babies. Although Sheila Marsden was one of the few women to keep her child when she left the mother-baby home, she did so at great sacrifice. Sheila discovered just what she would lose when her father came to visit her in the home.
He offered to pay for the baby to be adopted, and I could go back home, but there was no way he would have the baby. So I says, well, there's no way I'm letting the baby go. So he sat for a minute and looked at me, and he says, well, in that case, take a good long look at my face, because you will never see me again. And I never saw my father again. And my mother never knew of Patricia. She died without knowing of my first child.
Many who gave birth in the mother-baby homes still carry deep emotional scars. Patricia Tullier still vividly recalls being pregnant at 19 and abandoned by her own family and entering a home.
Where did you turn? What could you do?
All of a sudden, I was just taken off one day, and I was driven to Castlepollard, and that was the last I seen of the outside world for 2 years.
From the minute they went in, they were treated like criminals.
June Goulding was a witness. As a midwife, she delivered 200 babies during her 9 months at the Sacred Heart Convent. She said that during their confinement, the girls wore uniforms and were given assumed names. The pregnant girls worked long and hard hours, polishing the extensive woodwork, standing for hours on their feet in the laundry.
They had to cut the lawn and they had to trim the lawn, so 12 girls went down on their hands and knees and they worked backwards and they put the thing into their pocket, the grass. They put it into a wheelbarrow and one of them wheeled it away eventually. They never used a lawnmower.
When infants died, they were buried in unmarked graves in a cemetery.
Large families.
Senior social worker Sister Mary Sarto has studied the era.
A girl from a large family getting pregnant was seen as a disaster.
Some describe the attitude of the nuns in these homes as being vindictive.
Maybe some reflected the attitudes of the society that they came from.
And what about the birth fathers? They were never held accountable for their offspring. They usually just vanished.
Did you ever think the father would marry you?
Yes, I really did think he would turn up, and I used to sit in the bathroom window every Saturday watching cars come up the drive, long drive. But he never came. It was a dream, I suppose, a silly dream.
After they were born, the babies were put up for adoption. Destination, the United States. The Irish government turned a blind eye to the plight of the birth mothers and surrendered its responsibility to the church. The vast scope and secretive nature of these adoptions, spanning the late 1940s to the early 1970s, has just come to light. Archivist Katrina Crow discovered documents detailing a massive adoption procedure. The revelation that 2,000 babies were sent out of the country and the horrible way their mothers were treated has enraged Irish citizens. The adoption guidelines revealed that only Catholic couples could adopt and that the children had to be raised as Catholic. Very disturbing was the secrecy surrounding the adoptions. The senior church official, Archbishop John McQuaid, directed, "It is important that there be no publicity at any stage in connection with the adoption." Patricia Tullier loved her baby, Trevor Augustine. She stayed with him until he was taken to America at 20 months of age. As the time neared, the nuns restricted the precious hours she and the other mothers could spend with their children.
First of all, I remember this lovely red hair. That was the first thing, the curly hair. He had a big, huge mop of curly hair. And I was so proud of him.
And how much time could you spend with him?
Like just half an hour. And that was over. Just a few minutes when we'd slip up at night. Somebody else put him to bed. It was weaned, as I said, from him, like from 3 times a day to twice a day to once a day.
From breastfeeding?
Not just from breastfeeding, from seeing him.
Like most of the unwed mothers of her era, Patricia resumed her life, married, and kept the secret of her illegitimate baby strictly to herself. Suffered severe depression and even considered suicide. And finally, this year, she told her husband and the children, their son Ronnie.
How did you feel when you learned what she had gone through as a young pregnant woman in the birthing center?
My anger was aimed at the church, at what they had done to her. Yeah. To visualize my mother standing in a room holding her only child and having absolutely no way of hanging on to her child. Nuns standing around her, literally taking the child from her arms. I really feel strongly that the church, the institution of the church, had a lot to do in the stealing of children.
Children were not taken from their mothers until they were at least a year old, and many of the mothers spent as much as 2 or 3 years with their babies. For many of the mothers, the cherished memories of those lost children still remain crystal clear.
He said all these little words and baba and mama and things like that. I had him for 15 months. I bonded with him. And I knew, like, because he'd be different. If somebody else walked into a room, he'd be different than when I'd walk in. He used to get excited and he'd start all trying to come to me, you know. This was when he was starting to walk. He'd get all excited.
Father John Dardis speaks for the church. The Archbishop of Dublin, John McQuaid, passed away in 1973. But it was by his specific directive that procedures were put in place so that birth mothers in convents would sign away their babies for foreign adoption and agree never to try to find them.
And the church said, okay, we sign on to this idea that it is a vanished person, never to be seen or heard from again by the birth mother, hopefully.
Well, again, to break that down a bit, it was the adoption societies that were organizing this, if you like.
They had no choice, no source of supply without the signature that they were giving up the children. It was the moment they signed that signature that the baby vanished as far as the mother was concerned.
Yeah, as I say, the context at the time was very much one where there were very few choices and where...
Father, are you saying now it was a mistake?
Well, I'm not... I mean, how can you judge the 1940s with insights of the 1990s?
Legally, they might have signed away their rights to the child, but mothers like Siobhan never signed away their love.
In my heart, I never let go of that baby. You know, I always think of him and wonder where he is. Times I have thought, is he okay? I have often thought, would he be killed in action, or is he out there somewhere? Is he searching for me? I don't know.
The awful, inevitable separation came for Pat also.
We all knew what was going to happen. I'd seen it so often. I mean, 2 years there. I'd seen it so often. The last time I seen Trevor, I was told, I think it was on a Monday evening, that he would be going. On Tuesday morning, I was to get up early and get him ready. I had only seen him once that day, and I slipped up to the room that night to hug him, kiss him and cuddle him and whatever.
He was holding your hand, walking to the door.
Walking to the door, dressed in little brown shoes, beige socks, beige coat.
Did you give his hand to someone else?
No, I hugged and kissed him, and he was just taken out of my arms.
Taken out of your arms by whom?
By none. The norm then was for any of us whose babies were being taken away to us to go quickly to the top of the house, what we call the top of the house, to get one last peep of them being driven away.
Did you run up there?
Yeah, did I run?
Race to the window up high.
32 years later, Pat revisited Castle Pollard and once again climbed those steps leading to the high window where she and scores of other mothers had looked down for their last sad glimpse of a departing child.
This is the window.
This is the window. I didn't want to give him up. I don't think any mother wants to give up their child to start with. I always thought that he'd come looking for me and hoped he would.
When it was Siobhan's turn to go through the same wrenching ritual, in her frenzy, Siobhan ran to the wrong window. All she could do was listen for as long as she possibly could to the sound of the car carrying her baby away.
I couldn't see the car. All I could hear was the engine of the car, and it started and going away in the distance, and I continued listening until I could hear the sound no longer. It was gone, out of sight.
Though she desperately wants to find her child, Frances, Siobhan cannot begin an open search because to this day she's not told her husband and children about her firstborn, the little baby she had out of wedlock. Pat Tulia, as we've seen, has shared her past with her husband Ronnie and their kids. Contrary to what she expected, they were excited about finding Trevor, the missing family link. They've teamed up to launch a search for him.
And what about all those other children taken from their mothers so long ago? Now, as adult Americans, do they feel drawn to Ireland to seek the identity of their first mothers? For one woman in Pennsylvania, the answer is yes. Tom Jarrell joins her on a profound journey home after this.
The lost children of Ireland. The mothers who were forced to give them up many years ago have never forgotten them. Only now, with their terrible secret coming to light, can they begin to think of finding their children. And what if the children want to find them? Are the mothers prepared to acknowledge their children and reveal their secret to the world? As Tom Jarrell continues, the possibilities are exciting, but the outcome is uncertain.
Decades have passed and times have changed since mothers of a bygone era surrendered babies who were fated to leave Ireland's shores forever.
Now, though, their children who were spirited off to America to be adopted are returning here as middle-aged men and women searching for their birth mothers. Ironically, these journeys of hope and love can raise tensions and fear. The long-separated children, afraid their mothers will again reject them. Some mothers are terrified the past they've hidden has returned to wreck their reputations and their new lives.
But as we shall see, the decisions made years ago are still having immense consequences on the lives of people today, and not necessarily for the better. Across the Atlantic, Kathy Houlihan steps squarely into these emotional cross-currents. Kathy's one of those children who was given up, and she's always had an unfulfilled desire to know who her birth mother is and if they could be reunited. Kathy was born in a home for unwed mothers in Ireland in 1949. Today, married, successful, she's living in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Kathy was raised as an only child by Jack and May Houlihan, who told her she was adopted, but didn't want competition for their love from a long-lost birth mother in Ireland.
My parents always said, you know, I was chosen, and I was very, very much wanted. And of course, I felt that way. They didn't actually just tell me. They always made me feel very loved and wanted.
When you raise this issue with them, am I adopted? Who are my parents? How did they react?
Sometimes my mother's eyes would fill up, and my father would just get angry. He'd say, where are your parents? Why are you asking these questions? We told you your parents died. You know, your parents are dead.
Kathy's need intensified as she grew older. In her early 30s, she pressed her mother for information, only to learn the secret of her own illegitimate birth.
My mother tensed up, had tears in her eyes, but she said to me, your mother was 18 years old and desperately wanted to keep you, but she was too poor. At that point, I realized that she was not married.
More years passed. Kathy nursed May Houlihan through a losing battle with Alzheimer's disease. A few years later, the unthinkable happened when Jack was struck by the same illness.
I was just devastated. I felt this horrible feeling of loneliness. And then I started really wanting a family. Is this woman walking around in Ireland and I can just fly over there and touch her? I knew that they kept all their important documents in the safe deposit box.
Now handling her family's business affairs for the first time, Kathy found in a safe deposit box the first solid lead to her origins.
As you opened them, what did you discover for the first time?
I found my birth certificate. I had to rifle through some papers, and I pulled it out, and I was going through, I mean, kind of like in a frenzy, just trying to read. I remember my hands trembling a little bit.
But her birth mother's name had been deliberately crossed off to make tracing her virtually impossible. Though frustrated, Kathy pressed on, and her relentless search paid off. She was finally able to confirm the name of the woman who delivered her into the world.
As you learn more about the circumstances of your birth and so forth, does it satisfy your curiosity?
I want to see if I'm like her. I want to see if we have the same mannerisms. Does she walk like me? Do I have her eyes? Do I have her nose? Is she a tall woman? I'm a tall woman.
Despite the secrecy of the era, where records were hidden and names deliberately falsified, Kathy continued her search, finally locating her original birth records in the dusty file room of the Sacred Heart Convent in Cork, Ireland.
We also have the admissions book, the medicals, and the baptismal.
She also discovered Sister Mary Sarto, whose good works include acting as an intermediary between the adopted children and the birth mothers. Sister Sarto agreed to look for Kathy's birth mother to ask if she would like to be reunited, but warned rejection would be the likely outcome.
We may find her and she may deny that she is that person. We may find her and she may say yes, but I just couldn't meet him or her. My husband doesn't know, my children don't know, and it would be disastrous.
Sister Sarto searched, driving hundreds of miles, before personally approaching an elderly woman in her home. She had found Kathy's birth mother, but when she phoned Kathy, it was bittersweet news. Her husband, Paul, documented the call on home videotape.
Now, I have been to Donegal. You have? I went on Monday. Uh-huh. I met your birth mother. You met her? I'll tell you now exactly what happened. Okay. I went to Donegal. I went to the address that I had, where she's now married and has children and grandchildren. So I went in and I said, I am Sister Sarto, and I come from Cork, and there's somebody who would like to make contact with you, somebody from 1949. And she said, I know all about it, she said, and please go away. And don't come back again. Okay. Kathleen, I know your real need is to meet her. There is no point in meeting her if she doesn't want to meet me. If she doesn't want to.
Then a surprising turn of events. A few weeks later, Kathy received a letter and then talked on the phone with her birth mother. The dramatic moment Kathy had envisioned was not shared by the woman on the other end of the line.
When I hung up the phone, it was such a very strange feeling inside of me. I mean, for all these years, I thought, boy, when I meet my birth mother, this is going to be exhilarating. We're both going to be probably crying on the phone or just so excited, and it was flat. It was flat.
Kathy's desire to meet her mother was now tempered by the knowledge of the pain it might cause. Why? The answers could be found in a small village outside Donegal, Ireland. This was where the birth mother had escaped her pain of the past and built her new life. Married and a respectable mother of 8 and accepted by the conservative religious community. Her reputation and all she had built was threatened by the woman's voice from America. Now understanding all of this for the first time, Kathy and Paul set out for Ireland, hoping her mother would agree to a face-to-face meeting. After Paul and Kathy reached Ireland, it was confirmed that yes, they could come for a visit. Kathy first stopped at the mother-baby home where she was born, looking for something familiar, a room, a smell, anything that could rekindle her memory. She felt a sense of sadness at the cold, regimented nature of her birthplace.
If I walked away from Seanross Abbey with anything, I think that hit me square in the face. You were an item. You weren't a person, you were an item.
She discovered the graveyard, where the babies who died were buried anonymously.
To me, that just was such a message. You weren't important enough to have a name.
Finally, a time and place for the reunion was set in her mother's village outside Donegal, where she would find the answer to the question, after a 46-year separation, would she still be the illegitimate child, the bad blood?
I guess that's probably what this is all about. I do want to be accepted.
To be merely accepted is a far cry from Kathy's original expectations. She has learned a hard lesson. Across Ireland and Dublin, Patricia Tullier and her family are about to learn the same lesson. The decisions of the past are not that easy to undo.
You can almost feel the great anticipation and the anxiety, the questions of a lifetime. Will they be answered finally after nearly 50 years? Will the family circles be complete? Well, Tom Jarrell has the dramatic and unexpected conclusion after this.
2020 continues. Once again, Hugh Downs.
What will the future bring for the women of our story, all of them facing the secrets of their past? Will the Irish mothers be able to close this long chapter in their lives? Will the American Kathy Houlihan open a new one with the mother she has finally found? As Tom Jarrell continues, the first steps have been taken, but the rest of their journey isn't going to be easy.
Once Patricia Tullier's children learned of their half-brother Trevor, Donna, Ronnie, and Carol were ecstatic about a new member of the family. They rallied around Patricia and launched a search for him.
You're lying in bed at night and you're thinking, God, what does he look like? Does he look like me, or does he look like any of the rest of them? And it was just sheer excitement.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get your head around that there's somebody out there so far away that never knew you, never knew them, and it's just brilliant.
Why now is it important to you to find him after all these years?
I bore him. It's been in my system all the years, and maybe I would start to act, I suppose you don't say normal, but kind of the depression will go away, this longing, this unfinished chapter of my life.
The family search hit a stone wall almost immediately from both church and state sources. So the Tulliers turned to an unconventional source, Anne Kane, who searches for and reunites families. Out in the middle of rural Ireland, but armed with the high technology of a computer and access to the internet, Anne accomplished the seemingly impossible and may have closed a 34-year separation. She's certain she's found Pat's son. A stunned Pat heard the news.
So come yesterday, I got a phone call from a man who said he was Trevor, that he received my letter, but he had never known that he was adopted.
What did he sound like?
Breathless and shocked, I suppose, surprised. He said that we had the right date of birth, that he had been born in Ireland, and that the name was Trevor. Now, he said his parents had never told him he was adopted, but because of the information we had, he thought he was right.
Yes.
He thought we had the right person. Yeah.
Nevertheless, the American named Trevor went to his parents, who told him he was not adopted. He began a search for his own birth records to determine if Anne is right or wrong. The agonizing wait for Pat continues.
Good luck.
Thank you, Tom.
But that's not how Kathy Houlihan's odyssey ended. After agreeing there would be no cameras, no outside disruptions, she and Paul cautiously approached the modest home on the outskirts of the Irish village, where 8 half-brothers and sisters, their father, and her own mother waited for the return of the baby sent to America.
What did you see as you approached the home, and when did you first see your mother?
I went down the little hallway, and at the end of the hallway was my mother. It was an unusual meeting. It wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. She was very nervous, very rigid, and she extended her hand like this. I was hoping that if she would see me in person, that it would be this warm greeting that I was expecting all these years, and that didn't happen.
Stunned and disappointed by the formal chill of the first meeting, Kathy requested a second meeting. Ireland was in her blood. Soon, at a hotel in downtown Donegal, the two, mother and daughter, met again, this time with dramatically different results.
Did the cold handshake, the business-like attitude at the home, did it change when you met the second time?
It absolutely did. We sat at a table overlooking this gorgeous river, and I made her a cup of tea, and it was much more relaxed than the first meeting.
Do you think that somewhere tucked away in the back of her thoughts was the baby she left?
She told me she thought of me often. When we departed, we hugged, she gave me a kiss, and it was completely different.
She also mentioned to you the significance to her life of having seen you and trying to resolve this.
She gave me this. This is the Claddagh. It's a symbol in Ireland. It's actually used in a relationship. It can be marriage, it can be friendship, and it's love, loyalty, and friendship. What she said to me, and these words I will never forget, she said to me that now she can go to God in peace. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Later that day, Kathy embraced for the first time her half-brothers and sisters who warmly accepted her into the family.
I personally have found some inner peace in myself. The wondering is over. The search was very exhausting, but there's a closure here. My question has been answered.
Such a moment has not arrived yet for Patricia and her family. Instead, they live with the large, unanswered question: have they found the right Trevor? And will they ever hear from him?
He was wanted, definitely was wanted, and he still is if he wants to join the family, you know.
Mm-hmm. I love him as I loved him the day I said goodbye to him. And if he would like to get in touch, I would just be so happy to see him.
Tom, what about Trevor?
Barbara, we still don't know if Ann Kane has found the right Trevor, but as recently as just last night, she has a new lead to another man who may very well be Trevor. She's on the case, and I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't break it.
Well, now, what about Kathleen Houlihan? Has she gotten any closer to her mother?
Her mother's written her a letter. It's cool in content. She signs it off instead of love. She says goodbye, but they're still in touch. Kathy has become very warm and friendly with her siblings, the brothers and sisters. They're hopeful it will eventually reach the mother.
But it brings shame on her and the family.
Very difficult for her.
Now, there may be men and women in this country who feel that they do have mothers in Ireland. If so, how could they find the mother?
It's very difficult because the records are sealed by the state. However, there's a move afoot now to have a registry, so the parents and the children can each register if they want to find the other. It would be a cooperative thing, so the secrecy could be broken in those cases.
But it's still difficult. Secrets
Very
still
difficult.
buried.
Very difficult.
What a moving report. Thank you, Tom.